She stood at the gate, arms stretched straight toward me, her voice sharp and loud enough to carry across the fields. "Get out of my land!" she screamed, her face flushed red with rage. Behind her, 2 police cars blocked the driveway, officers leaning against them with folded arms like they were waiting to see what I'd do next. I tightened my grip on the old blue suitcase in my hand. This wasn't just land. This was my grandfather's ranch, the place I grew up running through vineyards, the soil my family had worked for generations. Karen's heels dug into the gravel as she stepped closer. "You don't belong here anymore. I already told the HOA you're trespassing." She spoke with a confidence that almost sounded official, like she owned every inch beneath our feet. But inside, I wasn't shaken. I let her rant, my eyes drifting to the farmhouse porch, where Grandpa's rocking chair still sat untouched, gently swaying in the breeze. A wave of memories washed over me, and in that moment, I knew I wasn't going anywhere. "You don't understand," I said calmly, my voice low but steady. "This is my family's land, not yours, not the HOA's. Mine." Karen laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. "We'll see about that," she hissed, snapping her fingers at the officers. "Arrest him now." For a split second, silence hung in the air. One of the cops glanced at me, then back at her, and something flickered in his eyes. Because what Karen didn't know was that I wasn't just some guy standing there with a suitcase. I'd come back prepared. The officers didn't move. They exchanged confused looks, waiting for a clear directive. Karen stomped her foot and yelled louder. "What are you waiting for? I told you, this man is trespassing. Drag him off my property." I didn't flinch. Slowly, I reached into my bag and pulled out a weathered leather folder. Inside were old papers marked with my grandfather's handwriting, his signature, the original deed to the ranch. I held it up where everyone could see. "This isn't your property," I said firmly. "This land was passed down to me. I have the deed, the title, and every legal right to stand right here. You're the one trespassing." Karen's smirk cracked for the first time. She snatched the folder from my hands, flipped through it quickly, then laughed like it meant nothing. "This is fake," she spat. "The HOA already approved me as caretaker. You're nothing but a squatter with a sob story." But the cops weren't convinced. One of them leaned in to look closer at the papers, his brow furrowing. "Ma'am, this looks official." Karen cut him off, waving her arms wildly. "Don't listen to him. He forged it. Arrest him before it's too late." I stayed calm, staring her down, because I knew something she didn't. Inside my bag was more than paperwork. I had proof she never expected: footage, signatures, and one powerful connection that could flip this entire scene in seconds. And she was about to regret ever calling those cops. Her voice grew shrill, almost desperate. "Why are you just standing there? He's dangerous. He broke in. He's stealing from me." Her finger stabbed the air in my direction like a knife. But her eyes betrayed her when the officers still didn't move. I crouched and zipped the side pocket of my bag and pulled out a small black folder with a gold badge gleaming on its cover. Instantly, the officers straightened, their expressions shifting. Karen froze. "You want to talk about dangerous?" I said slowly, locking eyes with her. "I served 12 years in the military. I worked security on federal land. And right now, I'm still connected to the sheriff's office in this county." I flipped the badge open so the officers could see it clearly. "So if anyone's getting arrested today, it won't be me." The cops exchanged quick looks. One of them shifted, lowering his voice. "Ma'am, we should verify this before." "No," Karen snapped, cutting him off. "He's lying. That badge is fake. He printed it. Can't you see? Don't fall for this." I didn't argue. I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen once, and a live video feed appeared. Footage from the ranch's old security cameras one's grandpa had installed years before he passed. The screen showed Karen just a week earlier, sneaking onto the porch, pulling a notice from her purse, and slapping it onto the front door. A fake HOA eviction notice. The officers leaned in. One let out a low whistle. "That's you, ma'am. Right there." Karen's face drained of color. She stammered, scrambling for words, but none came. And for the first time since I arrived, she realized her grip on this situation was slipping. Her hands trembled as she tried to grab my phone, but I pulled it back before she could touch it. You planted fake notices. You lied about ownership. And now, you're trying to use these officers like your personal muscle, I said, my voice steady but sharp. The lead officer stepped forward, no longer hiding his suspicion. Ma'am, if this footage is authentic, you could be facing charges for falsifying documents and trespassing. Karen laughed nervously, eyes darting between us. No, you don't understand. The HOA put me in charge. I was protecting the neighborhood. I was doing my duty. The excuse sounded weaker with every word, and even the officers looked unconvinced. I crossed my arms, letting the silence stretch. Funny, I said slowly. Because this ranch isn't part of any HOA. It never was. My grandfather made sure of that. So tell me, who exactly gave you that authority? Her mouth opened, then closed. For once, she had no answer. One of the officers turned to me. Sir, if you have legal ownership, you're within your rights to be here. She has no claim. Karen snapped again, her voice cracking. No, he can't stay here. This is my land now. I already told everyone in town. He doesn't belong. Her shouting drew attention. Neighbors down the road had started gathering, phones raised, recording everything. Karen noticed, and her face twisted with fury. I leaned closer, just enough so only she could hear me. Keep yelling, I whispered. The louder you get, the faster everyone sees the truth. Her lips pressed tight, but her pride wouldn't let her stop. If these cops won't remove you, she snapped, I'll bring someone who will. You'll regret ever stepping foot here. What she didn't know was that the real regret was moments away. Karen stormed toward her car, heels crunching on gravel, fumbling for her phone like she was calling in backup. The crowd grew, whispers buzzing, cameras locked on her. She turned back, pointing at me with the shaking finger. You think you've won? I'll get the real cops. I'll have you dragged out in cuffs before sunset. The officers exchanged uneasy looks. One spoke quietly into his radio, his tone cautious, not urgent, like he already doubted her authority. I stayed still, calm, watching her unravel in front of everyone. Go ahead, I said evenly. Call whoever you want, I said evenly. But when they get here, you're going to have to explain all of this. I tapped my phone again and pulled up another clip, this one from a hidden camera inside the barn. The video played clearly, showing Karen late at night, sneaking inside with two men, hauling out old tools and equipment, loading everything into the back of her SUV. A ripple of gasps spread through the neighbors. Someone muttered from the crowd, "That's theft." Plain and simple. Karen's face went ghost white. That's not me," she stammered. "That footage is edited." But her voice cracked under the weight of dozens of phones now aimed directly at her. The lead officer stepped forward, his tone noticeably firmer. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to stay where you are. We'll have to verify all of this." Her eyes darted wildly, cornered now. She tried to laugh it off, but sweat glistened along her hairline. "You're all being fooled. He's making this up. He doesn't belong here. I'm the one protecting this community." But no one was listening anymore. The neighbors weren't whispering now, they were openly shaking their heads, recording every second, some even booing softly. I looked straight at her and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "You tried to paint me as a criminal. Now, the whole town can see who the real thief is." That was when flashing lights appeared at the far end of the road. Another police vehicle was approaching, but this time, it wasn't for me. The cruiser pulled up quickly, lights reflecting off the old fence posts lining the ranch. A taller officer stepped out, his uniform crisp, his presence heavy with authority. Karen's smug smile flickered back to life. She actually thought this was her rescue. She waved frantically. "Over here. Arrest him. He broke into my property." But the officer didn't even look at her. His eyes locked onto me, and a slow smile spread across his face. "Well, I'll be damned," he said as he walked straight toward me. "Haven't seen you in a long time." Karen froze mid-wave. "Why, you know him?" she asked, her voice unsteady. The officer clapped a hand on my shoulder like an old friend. "Know him? This man trained half the guys in our unit back in the day. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't even be wearing this badge." The crowd erupted into murmurs, phones zooming in, capturing every word. Karen's jaw dropped. "No, no, that's not possible," she blurted. "He's lying. He's nobody, just some drifter trying to steal land." Her voice was swallowed by the officer's next words. "Actually, ma'am, he's the rightful owner of this ranch. His grandfather's records are still on file with the county." He narrowed his eyes at her. "And if your name isn't on those deeds, then you've got a very serious problem." Karen's hands shook as she tried to argue. That's not true. I have HOA approval. I'm in charge here." The officer let out a cold chuckle. "Funny thing about that, this ranch was never part of any HOA." He stepped closer, his tone sharpening. "And impersonating authority? That's a felony." Karen staggered back, her confidence unraveling in real time. She looked around at the neighbors, the officers, the flashing cameras, realizing there was nowhere left to hide. I stayed silent, letting the truth crush her on its own. Sometimes the best revenge is letting the mask fall off in front of everyone. Her face twisted as reality finally set in. She backed toward her car, hands trembling as she grabbed the door handle. "This is harassment," she screeched, her voice climbing toward hysteria. "You're all against me. I'll sue every single one of you." The taller officer raised a hand calmly. "Ma'am, step away from the vehicle. You're not going anywhere until we sort this out." Her eyes darted between the cameras, the cops, and me. Neighbors were openly filming now, some even laughing quietly. The woman who thrived on control, the self-proclaimed HOA enforcer, looked like a trapped animal. Then she made one last desperate move. Karen yanked open her car door, dug through her purse, and pulled out a laminated paper stamped in bright red. She held it up triumphantly. "Here, this is the notice from the HOA, proof that I'm in charge." The officer took it, glanced over it once, then smirked. "This isn't real. The county seal is crooked, the date's wrong, and the signature belongs to a judge who retired 10 years ago." He held it up for everyone to see. "This is forgery." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman shouted, "We told you, Karen." Another man laughed. "She faked the whole thing." Karen's face flushed crimson. She lunged forward to snatch the paper back, but the officer blocked her, his voice firm and final. "That's enough. You're under arrest for trespassing, falsifying documents, and impersonating authority." The neighbors erupted into cheers, some clapping, others chanting, "Justice! Justice!" As the handcuffs snapped around her wrists, Karen twisted her head toward me, eyes burning. "This isn't over. You'll regret this." I leaned down just enough so she could hear me over the noise. "No," I whispered. "This time, you're the one who regrets underestimating me." The officers led her away, her shouts fading into the distance. And for the first time since I stepped back onto my grandfather's ranch, the land felt quiet, safe, mine again. The sun dipped low over the vineyards, bathing the ranch in gold. As the police vehicles carried Karen away down the road, the crowd slowly dispersed. But a few neighbors approached me, their voices soft, almost apologetic. "We always knew she was lying," one man said, shaking his head. "She just made everyone afraid to speak up." Another woman added, "Your grandpa would be proud." "This land was always yours." A lump formed in my throat, but I held it together. My gaze drifted to the porch, where Grandpa's rocking chair still sat, creaking gently in the evening breeze. Memories flooded back, him teaching me to mend fences, ride horses, stand my ground. I set my suitcase down on the porch steps and ran my hand over the weathered wood. "I didn't come back to fight," I said quietly, partly to myself, but loud enough for those nearby to hear. "I came back to protect what was already ours." The taller officer nodded firmly. "You did more than that. You showed this town what happens when someone tries to steal a man's legacy." I looked out over the ranch, the vines, the barn, the soil soaked with my family's sweat and sacrifice. It wasn't just land. It was history. It was freedom. It was home. As the last neighbors left, and silence settled over the property once more, I whispered the words my grandfather always said before sundown. "No one takes from this land, it's in our blood." This time, I knew the fight was over. Justice had been served. The ranch was mine again, and nothing, no HOA, No fake notices. No Karen would ever take it away.